Elias Vorn stepped off the shuttle, the cold air of the Corellian University's ancient courtyard biting at his skin. Around him, towering spires of iridescent stone gleamed under the twin suns, casting long, fractured shadows across the cobbled steps. For a human, centuries removed from Earth's cradle, the grandeur of this alien academy was awe-inspiring. But beneath Elias's calm exterior, his mind raced. He was the first human in 3 centuries to be admitted to the Corellian University of Galactic Histories, an institution revered across the stars for its vast archives and legendary professors. But there was a catch. Humans were banned from history disciplines without a war counselor assigned to them at all times. Elias was the first to break that rule. A murmur rose from the gathered crowd of students and faculty, a mixture of curiosity and barely concealed fear. Elias felt dozens of eyes pierce him, some hostile, others fascinated. No one had openly admitted why humans were banned. Only whispers spoke of human unpredictability and dangerous insights. Dean Kasserith, a tall, slender Telshar with translucent emerald skin, stepped forward, his multifaceted eyes narrowing. "Elias Vorn," he said, his voice smooth but heavy with warning. "You must understand the weight of your presence here. History is sacred. Your people's past is complicated." Elias nodded. "I'm aware, and I'm here to learn, not to disrupt." Kasserith's gaze lingered. "Very well. But know this. Humans in these halls have not fared well before. You walk a narrow path." Elias's fingers brushed the pendant beneath his collar. A small, ancient earth relic. A reminder of what humanity had endured and overcome. "Then I will walk it carefully." The dean turned and signaled the crowd to disperse, but as Elias began ascending the steps toward the lecture hall, a sudden explosion shattered the calm. Flames erupted near the main gate, throwing smoke into the sky. Screams and chaos followed as students scattered. Elias's instincts kicked in. Without hesitation, he sprinted toward the source, weaving through panicked crowds. Near the gate, he saw a figure cloaked in dark robes fleeing a cloud of debris. Without thinking, Elias gave chase. The pursuer darted into the narrow alleyways of the university's outer quarters. Elias followed, muscles burning, heart pounding. Suddenly the figure turned, pulling a shimmering blade that hummed with lethal energy. "You shouldn't be here, human," the figure hissed, voice distorted by a mask. Elias dove to the side, narrowly avoiding the strike. His own hands moved quickly to produce a stun rod, a relic from his military training. The clash was swift. Elias dodged and countered, adrenaline sharpening every sense. With a final, precise strike, he disarmed the attacker, who fled into the night, disappearing into the labyrinthine streets. Elias stood alone, chest heaving, the stunned bystanders slowly gathering. Within moments, the dean and several guards arrived, their faces grim. "This attack was no accident," Kasserith said. "Someone wants to see you fail, or worse, dead." Elias wiped sweat from his brow. "Then they'll have to try harder." Word spread rapidly. The first human student without a war counselor had survived an assassination attempt on his first day. That evening, as Elias sat in his sparse quarters, the weight of the day settled on him. He thought of Earth, of all humanity's battles, wars that had forged and broken civilizations but had also given birth to unyielding resilience. His own survival was a testament to that legacy. A sudden ping from his comlink startled him. An encrypted message flickered on the screen. "You don't belong here. Leave before you become a weapon." Elias stared at the words. This was more than an academic trial. It was a test of survival, trust, and the fear that humans inspired in the galaxy. But it was also a challenge. Tomorrow, history class would begin, and Elias was ready to show the universe why humans had never truly been understood, and why that misunderstanding had kept them locked out for centuries. The grand lecture hall of Corellian University was unlike any Elias had ever seen. Gigantic soaring arches carved from moonstone stretched overhead, studded with softly glowing runes that pulsed in rhythm with the heartbeat of the academy itself. Rows of alien students sat in tiered semicircles, their eyes a kaleidoscope of colors and shapes all turned toward him, the human who had broken a centuries-old taboo. Elias's pulse quickened, but his expression remained calm, his posture erect as the newly appointed professor began the first lesson on the Zarnik collapse, a war that had shattered entire star systems. Professor Viral, a broad-shouldered Dravik with cracked obsidian skin, paced slowly before the holographic battlefield projection. The Zarnik collapse was the inevitable result of a failed peace accord, but the cost, billions of lives lost, could have been avoided with better strategic choices. A murmur rippled through the students, many of whom still carried fresh scars from their ancestors' conflicts. Elias's gaze flicked over the projection, seeing not just the battles but the unseen patterns beneath, the decisions that led to prolonged suffering. When the floor opened for discussion, Elias spoke with measured confidence. In the Zarnik collapse, he began, the dominant power could have ended hostilities within months by utilizing total war tactics, targeting critical infrastructure and supply lines simultaneously with overwhelming force. The room fell silent. Several students exchanged uneasy glances. Professor Viral raised an eyebrow. Your point is noted, Elias, but such tactics disregard civilian populations entirely. This university's doctrine teaches us to avoid unnecessary destruction. Elias nodded. I understand, but sometimes avoiding destruction prolongs suffering. The human approach, while brutal, aims for swift resolution. Protracted wars cause more death in the long run. Vera, a slender Krellian student seated near the front, raised her voice hesitantly. But isn't there a danger in valuing efficiency over morality? Your people are famous for recklessness. How can you justify that? Elias met her gaze. I'm not advocating recklessness. I'm advocating reality. Humans have survived because we understand that war is not a game of glory, but a necessity to protect what's left. We have no illusions about it. The tension in the room thickened. Several students shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Kasserith's voice, amplified by the hall's crystal acoustics, cut through the unease. This is precisely why war counselors accompany human students, to ensure discussions remain within ethical bounds. Elias glanced at the empty seat beside him. No counselor today. A flicker of defiance ignited in his chest. He would not be confined by fears and prejudices. Later that day, during a break in the sprawling gardens outside, Vera approached him, quietly. You speak with the cold logic of a warrior, she said softly, eyes searching his. How do you carry such thoughts without breaking? Elias studied her carefully. Because if we don't think like this, we don't survive. My ancestors fought for centuries with no quarter given or received. That forged a mindset. Prepare for the worst, hope for the best. Vera's lips pressed into a thin line. It terrifies me. Good, Elias replied. Fear keeps you alive. Their conversation was cut short as a squad of campus security officers hurried past. Their eyes darted suspiciously toward Elias. He's a risk, one muttered. Too unpredictable. Elias felt the weight of their distrust settle on his shoulders, heavier than the weight of 1,000 histories. That evening, in his quarters, Elias reviewed the day's lessons, scribbling notes in a worn leather journal. The message from the previous night still haunted him. You don't belong here. Leave before you become a weapon. His fingers traced the words. They didn't just fear his presence, they feared what humans represented, because humans didn't just fight wars, they mastered them. The morning sun barely filtered through the stained glass windows of the council chamber when Elias Vorn was summoned. The great hall, normally a place for scholarly debate and ceremonial decrees, was thick with an oppressive atmosphere. Alien, figures robed and grim-faced, filled the circular benches around the chamber's center. Elias's heart thudded. Today he would answer for his presence, his thoughts, and perhaps even his existence. The chamber's high tribunal was convened on an anonymous accusation. Elias was accused of inciting warlike ideologies and endangering the moral fabric of the Academy. The charge stemmed from his bold assertions during lectures, claims that challenged deeply held galactic doctrines on warfare and history. As he entered, eyes bore into him, curved mandibles clicking, iridescent skin shimmering with suppressed anger and luminescent eyes narrowing in suspicion. At the head of the tribunal sat Archon Jethal, an ancient insectoid with carapace streaked in silver. His voice was a low, rattling growl as he opened the proceedings. Elias Vorn, human of Earth, you stand accused of dangerous thought crime. Your teachings glorify conflict, undermine peace, and threaten the very essence of our academic sanctity. How do you plead? Elias lifted his chin, steadying his breath. I do not glorify war, he said evenly. I seek only to understand it, fully and honestly. To pretend otherwise is to ignore the truth and condemn countless species to repeat their failures. The chamber stirred. Whispers rippled like a breeze through dry leaves. Archon Jethal's many eyes glinted. Your truth calls for annihilation as strategy. You advocate total war tactics that obliterate entire populations for expediency's sake. Is this the example you offer our galaxy? Elias met the Archon's gaze without faltering. I offer survival. Humanity's history is written in fire and ash, but we endure. Our methods are harsh, yes, but they end wars quickly, saving lives in the long term. Ignoring harsh realities only prolongs suffering. The tribunal's second speaker, Professor Gal Mur, a weathered Larathi with deep-set eyes and scars crisscrossing his face, leaned forward. His voice was calm but heavy with years of battlefield experience. I have studied human wars extensively, he said. Their methods are ruthless, but effective. The human capacity for decisive action is unmatched. I defend Elias not because I agree with all he says, but because honesty in history is vital. Pretending human history is anything but brutal does no one justice. Murmurs of agreement and dissent clashed like clashing cymbals. Archon Jethal narrowed his gaze. Professor Mur's defense is noted, but the Academy's code is clear. No human shall teach or learn history without a war counselor present. Elias's jaw tightened. I am aware of your rules, but the presence of war counselors is meant to restrain, not to censor. I demand the right to explore history honestly. A chorus of voices rose in objection. Dangerous, reckless, human arrogance. The tribunal adjourned briefly to deliberate. Outside the chamber, Elias found Vera waiting, her face pale but resolute. They fear what you represent, not just war, but change. You threaten their carefully balanced peace. He nodded slowly. If truth threatens them, then it is peace built on lies. When the tribunal reconvened, the verdict was announced. Elias would be allowed to remain, but only under probation, and with a war counselor assigned immediately. Frustration burned within him, but Elias understood. The ban was not just about control, it was about fear. Fear of the human way of thinking, of ending conflicts decisively, of embracing the brutal pragmatism the galaxy wished to ignore. As the tribunal dispersed, an anonymous message blinked on Elias's comlink. They hide the worst chapters. Seek the archives if you want to know why. The warning was clear and impossible to ignore. The university's archives were legendary, vaults so deep and secure that even the most senior professors whispered of their secrets only in hushed tones. Rumors said the oldest records were forbidden to all but the council's highest echelons. Elias Vorn had no clearance, but the encrypted message, they hide the worst chapters. Seek the archives if you want to know why, gnawed at him relentlessly. Under cover of darkness, Elias met Vera near the massive gates leading to the archive wings. She was pale, her sharp eyes flickering with uncertainty. You realize if we're caught, she began. We're expelled, maybe worse, Elias finished. I'm ready. Vera swallowed hard but nodded. Then follow me. They slipped past the sleeping guards using old service corridors Vera had discovered during her own research. The cold silence of the archive's lower levels pressed in on them as they navigated narrow hallways lined with vaults pulsing with arcane energy fields. The walls hummed with stored knowledge, centuries of galactic history, much of it sanitized. Here, Vera whispered, producing a stolen access crystal. It shimmered faintly as she swiped it against the main vault door. The locks disengaged with a hiss. Inside, rows upon rows of crystalline data cubes floated in midair, each one a repository of entire wars, civilizations, and forgotten conflicts. Elias's fingers danced over the interface, searching. Then he found it. The Human Campaign Logs, a collection of classified records from centuries ago, marked Restricted, War Crimes, and Tactical Assessments. Vera's breath hitched. This is forbidden. Elias initiated playback. The holo display flickered to life, showing stark images of human fleets burning through enemy worlds, cities reduced to rubble in coordinated strikes, populations uprooted with chilling efficiency. They didn't just fight wars, Elias murmured. They crushed their enemies utterly. Vera's voice trembled. Why hide this? If humans were so effective, why not share these tactics? Because, Elias said quietly, they don't want others to learn how brutal survival truly is. It threatens their ideals of peace and mercy. Suddenly, the holo display glitching revealed missing pages, whole campaigns erased or redacted. Someone had deliberately scrubbed the most damning parts. A distant alarm blared. Vera's eyes widened. We've triggered a security sweep. Then, we don't have time, Elias said, grabbing several data cubes. We need to get this information out. They dashed through the maze of archives, alert klaxons blaring behind them. The sterile corridors echoed with the sounds of patrolling guards. Vera led Elias into a narrow maintenance shaft, just as heavy footsteps thundered past. For a moment, the two held their breath in darkness, hearts pounding. When the danger passed, they climbed out into a dimly lit research chamber. Elias examined the data cubes. This is more than history. It's proof humans mastered total war in ways no one else dared. Vera's voice was barely a whisper. And that's why the Academy bans you. They fear what would happen if others knew. Not fear of humans, Elias said, but fear of losing control over the narrative. He glanced at Vera. You've been brave to come this far. Why help me? She hesitated, then said, because the truth matters, and because I think you might be right. Before they could plan their next move, the chamber doors hissed open. Armed security poured in, led by Dean Kasserith himself. End of the line, Elias, the dean said coldly. Your reckless defiance jeopardizes us all. Elias met Kasserith's gaze unflinchingly. The truth jeopardizes a fragile peace. You can't hide history forever. Vera stepped forward. At least, hear what he has found. The dean's multifaceted eyes flicked between them. After a long pause, he barked orders to confiscate the data cubes. But Elias's mind raced. If this was the Academy's reaction, the galaxy's greatest historical institution feared human knowledge not because it was dangerous, but because it threatened their version of peace. As security escorted them away, Elias whispered, "This is only the beginning. They don't want the past to be remembered, but the future is already changing." The dim light of the detention chamber cast long shadows over Elias and Vera as they sat facing each other across the cold metal table. The hum of the security systems was the only sound, broken occasionally by distant footsteps echoing through the silent halls. For the first time since his arrival, Elias felt the weight of isolation press down on him. Vera broke the silence. "I still don't understand. How can you justify such ruthless tactics, destroying entire worlds, sacrificing millions? How do you live with that?" Elias stared into the quiet void between them, memories swirling beneath his calm exterior. "Because if we don't survive." She leaned forward, her eyes searching. "But isn't there more to war than survival? Honor? Compassion?" He shook his head slowly. "Those things exist in stories, not on battlefields. When your home is threatened, you do what must be done. Human history is brutal because the universe is brutal." Vera's voice softened. "And yet, you're here. You seek understanding, not just victory." Elias's gaze flickered to the pendant at his neck. an Earth relic worn smooth by generations. Humans learned something vital through centuries of conflict. We don't fight for glory. We fight to protect what remains. The survivor's code is simple. End the war quickly, decisively, so the living can rebuild. Vera's breath hitched. But at what cost? The archives showed annihilation. Entire cities wiped out in moments. That cost is real, Elias admitted. But so is the cost of endless war. Our methods aren't for the faint-hearted, but they prevent the kind of slow, grinding destruction that can kill billions over decades. She nodded slowly, absorbing the weight of his words. It's a harsh truth, one the Academy refuses to face. Elias smiled grimly. Exactly. They prefer sanitized histories, sanitized wars. But that's a lie that keeps civilizations weak and vulnerable. Outside the chamber, footsteps approached quickly. The door hissed open, and a tall figure entered. A war counselor, his uniform crisp, his expression unreadable. Elias Vorn, the counselor said, you will be assigned to me immediately. It is the Academy's decree. Elias stood, tension rippling through him. Finally. The counselor's eyes held a quiet intensity. My name is Talrin. My duty is to guide, restrain, and protect. I am not your jailer, but your balance. Vera watched as Elias nodded slowly. Then let's begin. In the days that followed, Talrin pushed Elias harder than any professor. Their sessions were grueling debates and simulations where strategy met morality. One evening, after a particularly tense discussion about the ethics of preemptive strikes, Talrin asked quietly, do you believe your people's ways are the future, or the past we must overcome? Elias looked out the window at the sprawling cityscape, lights twinkling like stars. I believe humans embody a truth others fear. War is not a failure of diplomacy, but its foundation. If you understand that, you hold power. If you deny it, you are doomed to repeat mistakes. Talrin nodded slowly. Perhaps that is why your presence unsettles this place. You challenge not only history but their peace. Vera joined them one night, her skepticism tempered by newfound respect. You carry a burden, Elias, but also a spark. Maybe it's time the galaxy saw humans not as monsters but as a warning and a lesson. Elias smiled faintly. Then, we have work to do. Their alliance marked the beginning of a quiet revolution within the Academy, one that would ripple far beyond its ancient walls. The cold chamber was silent except for the soft hum of the neural interface powering up. Elias sat rigid in the sleek chair, the strap securing him in place a stark reminder that this was no ordinary test. Before him, the simulation pod's screen flickered to life, displaying a holographic star map marked with flashing red dots. Zones of conflict, dying worlds and fleeing fleets. Welcome to the trial of strategy, Elias. Talrin's calm voice echoed from the control panel behind him. Your challenge. End this war swiftly with the least loss of life possible. Your actions here will determine if you are fit to study history unrestrained. Elias's heart beat steady but fierce. I understand. The simulation began. He was thrust into the command seat of a human fleet, faced with a hostile alien coalition entrenched across multiple star systems. The map pulsed with intelligence reports, enemy supply lines, civilian population centers, defensive fortifications. Elias knew the Academy expected him to avoid total war tactics, to operate within their prescribed rules of engagement. But he also knew that half measures had dragged real wars on for decades, costing billions of lives. He issued commands with cold precision, rapid strikes targeting enemy logistics hubs, disabling communications before ground forces deployed. Drones swarmed like locusts, overwhelming point defenses and clearing the path for shock troops. Talrin observed silently, eyes scanning data feeds. Elias moved quickly, balancing tactical offensives with strategic sacrifices, targeted attacks on key enemy installations, allowing isolated civilian zones to evacuate where possible, but never compromising the campaign's momentum. Your pace is aggressive, Talrin finally commented. Do you believe this will save lives? Elias's voice was steady. It ends the war faster, delaying results in prolonged casualties on all sides. Suddenly, the simulation shifted. Reports flooded in of enemy retaliation, guerrilla attacks, on evacuation corridors, counterstrikes targeting neutral systems. Elias recalculated, sending diversionary fleets to shield civilians while intensifying strikes on enemy command centers. The pressure mounted as his resources dwindled. Hours passed in simulation minutes. At the climax, Elias ordered a final, devastating strike, coordinated orbital bombardments on enemy military infrastructure, disabling their capacity to wage war. The holographic display pulsed red, then faded to green. The war ended. Talrin stepped forward. You achieved victory in record time, with minimal civilian casualties, compared to traditional prolonged engagements. Elias allowed himself a small nod. Victory is only meaningful if it ensures survival. Talrin's eyes softened briefly. Your methods challenge the Academy's ideals, but your results are undeniable. Before Elias could respond, the simulation flickered, and an unexpected alert appeared. Moral divergence detected. Talrin raised an eyebrow. Explain. The system's voice was cold and mechanical. Your strategy prioritized military victory over long-term peace stability. Post-conflict rebellion risk rated high. Casualty statistics acceptable but insufficient in ethical compliance. Elias frowned. Ethical compliance? The galaxy's ethics have preserved nothing but stagnation. Talrin sighed. That is the paradox you bring. Efficiency versus morality. Vera entered the chamber, her expression grave. The Academy fears this truth. You've proven the strength of human strategy, but also its danger. Elias stood tall. Danger or not, it's real. If we don't face it, history will keep repeating its worst mistakes. Talrin regarded him thoughtfully. Perhaps the galaxy needs both. Your ruthless pragmatism tempered by their compassion. That balance may be the future. Elias's gaze hardened with determination. Then it's time to stop hiding from history, to stop banning humans, to face the past, no matter how brutal, so the future can be shaped differently. Vera smiled faintly. You might just be the catalyst the Academy needs. The trial was over, but Elias knew the true battle, the one for understanding, acceptance, and change, was only beginning. News of Elias's trial and its unprecedented results spread like wildfire across Corellian University and beyond. In the corridors of power, whispered debates erupted into heated arguments. The ancient alliance of alien species that governed. The Academy found itself split. Some saw Elias's perspective as a necessary jolt to complacency. Others viewed him as a dangerous incendiary who threatened fragile peace. In a high council meeting within the marble-clad chambers of the Galactic Assembly, Archon Jathal's many eyes glinted with cold fury as he addressed the gathered delegates. The humans' reckless strategies risk unraveling decades of diplomacy and trust. We cannot allow one species' brutal history to dictate our future. A slender, serpentine diplomat from the Threll system, Senator Vinar, leaned forward. And yet, Archon, how long can we deny the reality Elias presents? The wars we sanitize in our histories have destroyed more lives than his tactics ever would. The debate grew louder, fracturing alliances that had stood for centuries. Meanwhile, Elias, under close watch but free to lecture, continued to push boundaries. His classes became battlegrounds of ideas where old doctrines clashed with harsh truths. Students, both alien and human, found themselves torn between reverence for tradition and the raw honesty Elias brought. One afternoon, Vera approached him in the garden, her face drawn with concern. The council plans to convene a special tribunal to reconsider the human ban entirely. It's your actions that forced this, but it's also made you a target. Elias nodded, his jaw tight. I expected as much. They want to control the outcome, ensure it doesn't lead to change. Vera's eyes flickered with worry. Some factions already whisper of harsher measures, expulsion, or worse. He looked out over the courtyard, sunlight glinting off alien flora. They fear what humans represent, not just war, but honesty, pragmatism, and survival. If I'm to be the symbol of that, then I won't back down. The day of the tribunal arrived with an almost oppressive solemnity. The chamber was packed. Scholars, military leaders, diplomats, and students alike, all eager or fearful to witness the outcome. Archon Jethal presided, his voice echoing with gravity. We gather to decide the fate of human participation in galactic history education without war counselors. The question before us: are humans to be embraced or forever barred? The room erupted with passionate speeches. Senator Vinar argued, humans embody the brutal truth of war. If we reject their perspective, we reject survival itself. Opposing him, General Kiserith stood firm. Their methods violate our core principles. To allow humans free rein is to invite chaos. Elias was called to speak last. Standing before the assembly, he felt the weight of millennia of fear and hope press upon him. History is not a story to be rewritten for comfort, Elias said, voice steady and clear. It is a mirror reflecting who we are, flaws, failures, and all. My people's history is harsh, yes, but it is honest. To ban humans is to deny that truth. Only by facing the past fully can we build a future that lasts. A hush fell over the chamber. Then, a murmur spread as Talron, the war counselor assigned to Elias, rose from the crowd. Balance is possible, Talron said. Humans need guidance, yes, but also trust. We cannot shield ourselves from the reality that their perspective offers. Together, we can forge new ways to understand war and peace. Vera, standing beside Talron, added, fear should not be the foundation of our education. Courage, the courage to face difficult truths, must be. The tribunal paused for deliberation. Outside the chamber, Elias and Vera shared a quiet moment. What happens next? Vera asked softly. We wait, Elias replied, and prepare. Because no matter the outcome, the galaxy has already changed. The chamber was deathly silent as Archon Jethal returned to the center dais, the weight of centuries seemingly pressing down from the vaulted ceiling. His multifaceted eyes scanned the assembly, lingering on Elias with a gaze that pierced beyond flesh and ideology. After a moment that stretched like eternity, he spoke. The council has reached a decision. Elias stood tall, heart hammering, not with fear, but with the resolve born of every step taken to reach this moment. The ban on human participation in galactic history without war counselors is hereby lifted. A ripple of gasps and murmurs spread through the hall. Some faces betrayed disbelief, others relief. Archon Jethal's voice grew softer. However, this reinstatement comes with the understanding that humans and their war counselors will work in tandem, melding pragmatism with prudence, honesty with compassion. This balance will guide future generations. The tribunal adjourned, but Elias knew this was not an end. It was the beginning of a hard-fought journey. The old ways would not fade overnight, but the seeds of change had been sown. Later, beneath the iridescent glow of the Academy's evening skies, Elias and Vera walked the gardens. Alien blooms released luminescent pollen, drifting like stardust around them. Vera broke the silence. You've changed this place. Changed them. But what about Earth? What about the worlds that shaped you? Elias looked up at the twin moons hanging low over the horizon. Earth still bears its scars, but maybe now our story won't be hidden or twisted. Maybe it can teach others what it means to endure. She smiled softly. You faced the galaxy's greatest council and didn't flinch. I didn't have to, Elias said, because I wasn't alone. Their eyes met, understanding and respect passing between them, a partnership forged in truth and courage. Weeks later, the Academy announced a new program, the Human History Initiative, designed to integrate human war doctrines and ethics into the broader galactic curriculum. Elias was appointed as its lead historian, with Talron as his war counselor and Vera as his trusted advisor. Together, they began drafting lectures, simulations, and debates that explored the raw realities of conflict and survival. The initiative was controversial, sparking resistance and fierce support in equal measure. One evening, as Elias prepared a lecture on the Battle of Sol Prime, Earth's defining conflict, Vera approached him with a datapad. "There's a message for you. From Earth." He opened it with trembling hands. A hologram flickered to life, an elder woman's face, lined with age and wisdom. "Elias," she said, "we watched your journey with pride. The galaxy must know the truth. Not just the sanitized tales. You carry our history and our hope." Elias felt something inside him shift, a profound connection, a reminder that his fight was not just for recognition, but for the survival of a legacy. As the hologram faded, he turned to Vera and Talron. "This is only the beginning. We have much to teach and even more to learn." Outside, the stars shimmered, infinite and beckoning. The galaxy had opened a door, and humanity was stepping through, no longer banned, no longer hidden, but fully part of the cosmic story. And somewhere, deep in the archives, the shadows of history waited, no longer to be feared but to be understood.